Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So again, in this session, from pixels to perception, we're going to discuss how image sensing in the automotive world is fundamentally changing, and not just evolving, but really transforming. Where once image sensors were just cameras kind of capturing the road, now they're becoming very much the foundation for how vehicles understand their surroundings. They're enabling everything from smarter driver assistance systems to fully autonomous navigation. But of course, these advances are bringing new challenges, challenges such as how to process images in real time, how to integrate artificial intelligence at the edge, how to ensure privacy and safety, how to make all of this reliable under real world conditions. So those are the sorts of issues that we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to explore what's driving this shift and what it means for the companies who are building, deploying, and relying on these sensor technologies. So here's what we'll be covering. So first, we'll set the stage with a market overview. So how image sensors are being used today and what's changing. Then we'll look at new sensor types and capabilities like thermal imaging, event-based vision, and perception beyond visible light. From there, we'll take you through our future roadmap where the technology is going to head over the next 10 years. And finally, we'll discuss what these shifts mean for manufacturers, for suppliers, for technology providers, and what these stakeholders can do now to prepare. And just a quick note, please do feel free to ask questions as we go. Just go ahead and drop them in the questions box, and we'll try to get to as many as possible at the end of our session. So I'm going to hand it over to Subbu now, who's going to walk us through the market for image sensors in automotive applications and some of the technology evolutions.
Thank you, Jillian. Hello, all. So let me start off with the market opportunity. So the global automotive image sensors market is, set for substantial growth. The estimated CAGR is 12.3% from 2025 to 2030. So we project the market opportunity to reach $7.5 billion by 2030. Now, rising integration of ADAS, advances in autonomous driving technologies, and improved vehicle safety features will be the key drivers towards this growth. As you can see on the chart here, Asia Pacific is the largest and fastest growing region. It's of course led by China, Japan, and South Korea. So some of the key market drivers for the Asia Pacific region include China's dominance in electric vehicles and autonomous driving technology, as well as increasing government regulations promoting automotive safety. As we also know, Asia Pacific region is an expanding automotive manufacturing hub. So we have manufacturing hubs in China, Japan, India, and South Korea. So this is driving the growth. We see high adoption of image sensors in premium and mid-range vehicles. Now, this region has some restraints, and I would say that increasing competition among domestic and international sensor suppliers, these are squeezing margins, limiting pricing power, and increasing costs. And the other restraint I would say is the semiconductor supply chain disruption, and this can affect production. And we saw during the COVID that it had a major impact, and that still, supply chain disruptions due to the current global scenarios, it continues to, be there as a factor. If you look at the other two major regions here, that's North America and Europe. Now, these two are very well-established markets. So they're driven by strict safety norms. And of course, they have a very strong automotive manufacturing base. Now, if you look at the specific drivers for these two regions, it would be major investments by tech companies and automakers. So you have Tesla, Ford, GM, Volkswagen, BMW, Daimler. They're investing in autonomous driving and sensor-based technologies. We also see that there is an increasing consumer demand for luxury vehicles and electric vehicles with advanced safety features driving demand for image sensors. If you ask me to list some of the restraints for these two regions, I would say they are limited by high manufacturing costs. So these two regions are expensive to manufacture. And these two regions are also vulnerable to supply chain disruptions, also in semiconductor chips. Now, if you look at the other regions covered in this chart, right, the other global markets, they're relatively nascent. But there is a gradual growth of high-end luxury vehicles in specific regions like the Middle East. We also need to note that some of these markets have very harsh weather conditions. I mentioned the Middle East, so it's famous for its extreme, heat conditions. So this can affect the performance of image sensors. So what works in North America may not work well in Middle East. And then the other markets, rest of the world markets, lack widespread regulations for ADAS integration. So that's on the market overview. Now I'll go over to the next slide, wherein I will be covering a bit of the macro and the technological trends. Now, if you look at the four major trends that I've covered here, the demand for autonomous safety and convenience features in vehicles continues to grow. So, in addition to consumer preferences, there are regulatory expectations across global markets. So, the regulatory expectations also driving it apart from consumer preferences. Now, advanced image sensors are foundational to enabling the next generation of autonomous functionalities. So, this is driving innovation. Now, when we see the sensors itself, right, we see an evolution of the sensor technologies. Now, CMOS and long wave infrared LWIR sensors, they support capabilities such as precision imaging, thermal detection, and environment depth mapping. Now, these technologies form the backbone of scalable perception systems. Advanced sensors support real-time data processing, enabling quicker, more adaptive decisions that enhance safety and passenger experience. If I want to add the deployment barriers also, right, they still persist. I mean, you have deployment barriers, limiting widespread adoption and scalability. So these would include environment limitations, system demands, and also integration hurdles. So this, I would say, is the deployment barriers. So with that, I would like to go on to the growth and maturity trends. Here you can see we've got three sections. So we've got the commercially mature, and then the early integration, growing prominence, and then the emerging. Let me start with the mature capabilities. So we have wide dynamic range, what we call WDR. Now this is a standard across automotive platforms. It handles extreme lighting transitions like glare and tunnels. Stereo vision is being widely used in L2 and L3 systems. So we have L1 to L5, right? Autonomous systems. Now, stereo vision is being used in L2 and L3, enabling real-time depth perception for obstacle detection. Global shutter sensors eliminate motion blur, and they are now essential for crash avoidance applications. Now, if you look at the the rapidly scaling technologies in the next quadrant, we have the time of flight sensor. So these are gaining ground for both exterior perception and also in-cabin monitoring. Then you have the near infrared and the short wave infrared sensors that are expanding visibility beyond the visible spectrum. Now, these become very critical for adverse weather and low light conditions. And then we also have event-based sensors. Now, these sensors respond to changes in the environment. They have ultra low latency, and so they are ideal for fast-moving, unpredictable scenarios. And then we have polarimetric sensors. So these sensors detect texture and surface type through polarization. Spectral imaging holds promise for in-cabin wellness monitoring and also road surface recognition. So these are the technologies that we covered. And I also mentioned the emerging technologies with event-based sensors, polarimetric sensors, and spectral imaging. The next section, we will see more about the developments. So I would also, before I conclude, I also want to, mention about the roadblocks to image sensors. So, despite all the innovation, image sensors are still not ready for full level 5 autonomy. And one of the questions asked is when will we have full, level 5 autonomy? It's going to be beyond 2030, 2035. But now, what are the reasons that are, preventing this image sensors, supporting level 5 autonomy? First, limited object recognition. Now, today's sensors can misidentify or fail to detect objects in complex urban environments where the stakes are high. And second, cost and scalability remain real concerns. I mean, this people ask, the companies ask is what is the cost and scalability that would be really good for reaching L4 and L5. Now, to reach L5, mind you, a vehicle would need significantly higher volume and diversity of sensors. Now, this definitely drives up cost and complexity. Will the cars of today be able to, afford that? I mean, the owners of those cars, that needs to be seen. And then there is the issue of latency and real-time processing. So even a fraction of a second delay in interpreting sensor data can jeopardize decision making in dynamic scenarios. And then we have cybersecurity and privacy. We see that vehicles are getting smarter. There's a lot of communication happening. And then as these vehicles get smarter, they become more vulnerable to breaches. So vehicle cameras, right, especially those with cabin facing views, these introduce sensitive data and potential attack surfaces. And then there is also, I talked about many sensors being there. So there is this sensor fusion complexity. Now, it's not just enough that we have data from all these sensors. How do we integrate this data? And then it needs to be in perfect synchrony, right? So that integration layer is still a bottleneck in most vehicle architectures. And finally, I would say that, to meet true L4, L5, that is a completely autonomous vehicle, we would need near perfect sensing and redundancy, something that the current platforms are still working towards. So while the development of image sensors has made significant strides, true autonomy requires a new standard of precision, intelligence, and security in image sensors. So image systems. So with that, I would, pass you on to the next speaker.
Sure. Thank you, Subbu. But if we can go to the next slide before we continue,
Sure.
let's go ahead and do just a quick audience poll here. So which of the capabilities that you see here do you find most exciting when you think about the future of vehicle sensors? Is it real-time 3D mapping? Is it in-cabin monitoring for driver safety and comfort? Uh, Full 360-degree perception, event-based vision that reacts instantly to change, or all-weather reliability for better performance in fog, glare, or darkness. So please just take a few seconds to note your response. Okay. Okay, and it looks like, so
Still
shifting
changing.
here. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like I mean, it's almost an even spread here, but preference here for full 360 degree perception and all weather reliability. And the reason that we wanted to ask this question was because these are the capabilities that are being developed and tested today. And we're going to talk about which of these capabilities are gaining the most traction across the industry. And so now I'm going to hand that over to Kasthuri, who's going to cover some of these emerging innovations and application evolutions as we look to this future technology roadmap.
Thank you, Jillian.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting slide where we are outlining 6 key innovation pillars that are redefining how sensor integrates into next generation AI-ready automotive platforms. As we move across the spectrum, we see that R&D intensity increases, and that starts from the core system integration and scaling to the cutting edge breakthroughs. We actually begin with the core, which is the modular architecture and integration layer. And this is all about aligning sensor hardware, computing, and packaging to support scalability and security across platforms. We have lots of examples from companies like NVIDIA and Qualcomm who are leading this charge, and they are providing SoCs and AI accelerators, which are designed for modular, upgradable perception stacks. And we also have example from Renesas and Mobileye, who are providing scalable sensor fusion across ADAS and autonomous domains, which are adding to the layer of modular architecture and integration. Next, what we have is the very interesting stuff, which is system level enablement, which enables platform-wide orchestration for compliance, maintainability, and distributed intelligence. So companies like Aptiv and Bosch, they are very strong players here who are offering centralized and zonal control units which synchronize sensors, software, and power distribution attributes. These orchestration layers actually allow vehicles to handle software updates, real time decision making, and cross-domain coordination in a very reliable manner. If we take the next layer, which is the in-cabin intelligence, it focuses on human-centric sensing for safety, personalization, and inclusivity. Companies like Smart Eye, Tobii, and Seeing Missions, they are providing advanced driver monitoring systems that detect distraction, drowsiness, and engagement. What we also see in premium models, companies like Hyundai Mobis and Mercedes-Benz, they are deploying wellness-driven features, which is like stress sensing, emotion recognition, and personalized cabin monitoring. At the sensor level, we have the perception intelligence, where sensor-specific innovations enable robust, low-latency, context-aware environmental understanding. For example, the Sony's IMX image sensor lineup, which includes both a global shutter and the event-based models developed along with Prophecy, actually adds to this layer. And we have lots of other examples from companies like Onsemi or OmniVision, where they're trying to enhance visibility across lighting extremes and also adverse weather conditions. Supporting all of this is a very interesting cross-cutting enabling layer, where we see capabilities that deliver scale, flexibility, and resilience, which includes modular software frameworks from companies like Electrobit, where they provide secure OTA platforms from Harman and integrated design platforms which actually help bridge multiple sensing and compute domains across OEM ecosystems. Finally, what we have is the frontier innovation layer, where we see future forming technologies are taking into shape. So companies like Innovation, they're coming up with neurovision sort of sensors. So lots of other examples where companies are providing quantum dot-based technologies and shortwave IR sensors, which can handle very challenging environments like snow, fog, or low reflectance conditions. So ideally, this model is basically how we see sensing is becoming a platform and not just a component. For example, modularity is driving product line flexibility, while we see embedded AI is enabling context-aware decisions, and quantum secure design is supporting long-term data integrity. What we see is these breakthroughs are not going to happen obviously overnight, but they're setting the foundation for L4 and L5 autonomy, and some of the restrictions we've already discussed. What it actually means. So for CTOs, this model can help them define build versus buy strategy. For CEOs, it can enable focus on portfolios and strategic partnerships. And for CFOs, it can clarify how to balance near-term ROI with long-term platform evolution. What is the urgency? What we see is, again, sensor is not becoming a feature anymore. It is becoming the intelligent interface between vehicle, driver, and environment. The next 2 years will actually determine the trajectory for the next decade of automotive sensing. We've already seen product roadmaps being developed from 2028 to 2032, and these are being in the final stages. And if organizations are going to delay investment in these innovation layers, the 6 layers which we discussed, especially in modularity, perception intelligence, and orchestration, they're going to risk falling behind on safety standards, missing platform convergence, or worst case, locked into closed, obsolete architectures. Having discussed the innovation layers, let's take a look at the innovation landscape in automotive image sensing. It is a very interesting slide where you can see a clear view of the rapidly expanding innovation across automotive image sensing technologies. There are different sensing modalities starting from CMOS to spectral, and each of which is playing a very critical role in building intelligent, autonomous-ready perception systems. So starting with CMOS and global shutter, we see companies which I've already mentioned, like they're coming up with IMX 925636 along with Prophecy. Onsemi and Samsung are advancing high-speed flicker-free vision. And all of these sensors are actually laying the foundation to today's ADAS, and it will remain key to short-term platform refresh cycles. In the stereo vision part, we have examples from players like Denso and Onsemi, which are actually trying to come up with compact AI-enabled depth systems that enhance near-field object detection and lower the cost of 3D perception. And very interestingly, if we look at event-based or neuromorphic sensors sensing, we see innovators like Prophecy and also Sony Prophecy relationship and the innovation. They are mimicking human vision by capturing only motion changes. These ultra-low latency systems are actually crucial in high-speed, unpredictable environments. And we are seeing a lot of examples where innovation landscape is basically expanding. Moving on to NIR and SWR imaging technologies from OmniVision, Nanco, SWR Vision Systems, and Sony Sen SWR, we see they're pushing vision beyond the visible attribute, which is critical for low light perception, driver monitoring, and all-weather reliability. And this is what we have seen from the poll results also. In TOF, we have examples of companies like Texas Instruments, Melixis, and Sony SPAT, where they're enabling real-time 3D mapping for both in-cabin and external sensing. And all of this is actually laying the foundation for gesture control and zonal autonomy. Thermal imaging from Howl Autonomous Imaging, Obsidian, and Hymax actually fills the gap in terms of zero visibility conditions, which is offering a nighttime pedestrian detection and redundancy for L3 safety stacks. Coming to polarimetric sensors, we have examples of Sony, PolarSense, Fresnel, and Lucid Vision Labs, where they enable material and texture awareness, and which are actually valuable for detecting hazards like black ice or sleek roads. And in the spectral imaging segment, we have examples of Spectricity and Sidos technologies, where they are trying to come up with sort of material analysis, which is unlocking future use cases in in-cabin wellness, surface classification, and environmental intelligence. Together, what we see is all these vendors and modalities are forming a very robust layered sensing architecture, which goes well beyond traditional imaging to support autonomy, safety, and vehicle intelligence. Again, as I mentioned, roadmaps are being already created. So companies should start thinking about these sensor categories. Otherwise, they're going to be in the risk of being locked out of strategic supplier rosters. And they're going to be forced into high-cost integrations that can even fail to meet performance targets. So the urgency is already there in terms of looking into these areas. So CTOs or CEOs or CFOs, while looking into investment strategies, they can try to prioritize different sensor domains, trying to create differentiation among these neuromorphic, spectral, and SWR sensors, and guide their roadmaps accordingly. Having said that, let's take a look at some of the very interesting emerging and current applications of these emerging sensor technologies. So we have different colors. What we see is some of these are emerging and some of these are already current. For example, we have event-based sensors which help in motion detection and basic collision prediction. But they're also being developed for high-speed tasks like gesture recognition, dynamic object tracking, and even predictive motion response, which are all critical for fast-paced urban autonomy. And we've already mentioned examples of companies like Sony and Prophecy, where they're leading with their sensors in terms of the IMX module, which is actually enabling ultra-low latency neuromorphic sensing. And we also have example from Innovation, which is supporting high-speed edge perception, which is what is exactly needed for these emerging use cases. When we take NIR and SWR sensors, it actually supports low light obstacle detection currently, but they're expanding the capabilities into fog and dark scene sensing, night scene reading, and hazard reduction in low visibility conditions. We have classic examples from Sony and SWIR and also the SWR vision systems, which is actually enabling vision through fog and darkness. And we've also seen Nanco and OmniVision, where they're trying to enhance driver monitoring and nighttime ADAS by directly aligning with these new demands. And again, with TOF sensors, they are currently used for basic road sensing today, but what will emerge is the ability to support occupant posture deduction, 3D geometry estimation, and close-range external mapping. And all of these are going to be critical in terms of in-cabin safety and low-speed autonomous functions. And we have lots of examples from companies like Texas Instruments, Sony SPAT, and Melixis, where they're delivering TOF platforms that support everything from gesture controls to advanced parking. And this is actually enabling the shift from passive measurement to interactive perception. The next category, the polarimetric sensors, they're moving from niche weather applications into material classification, glare reduction, and hazard detection, like spotting black ice or differentiating wet roads. So we have examples which I mentioned already, Sony PolarSense, Fresnel imaging. They're building sensors that detect polarized light patterns, which help vehicles better understand surface conditions. And all of these are essential for safer decision making. Next, we have the spectral sensors, which goes beyond visible light imaging to recognize materials, detect chemical anomalies, and even monitor driver health in real time. So companies like Spectrosity and Silos Technologies, they're aiming to miniaturize spectral modules to bring these capabilities into production vehicles while making advanced perception feasible without bulky systems. Together, these sensing systems feed into core automotive functions, which is ADAS, driver monitoring, night vision, autonomous driving, and contextual safety response. These aren't actually theoretical upgrades, which we are saying, but capabilities where OEMs must deliver to rising expectations. And as I mentioned, it's going to be like the CTOs or CEOs or CFOs have to actually prioritize their next gen platform planning and also get into early stage integration so that they can avoid late cycle redesigns and also the costly retrofits, which is going to be the way forward in terms of the smart investment path. Having discussed about some of the current and emerging application, it'll be interesting to see what's going to evolve in the future. So we have a roadmap which is being developed based on all the innovations that we have noted. So what we see is we have broken down into three eras, which is from basic optimization to intelligent perception and eventually to cognitive and self-learning systems. And each of this stage builds on the last, which is the move towards greater autonomy, safety, and regulatory adaptability. The first era, which is the sensor optimization era, which is what we have marked between 25 to 27, which is the initial phase, and this focuses on compact low power sensors that support enhanced dynamic range, energy efficiency, and basic autonomy readiness. Systems are actually very smart, but they have to form the bedrock for ADAS and in-cabin features. Gaze tracking, biometric inputs, and foundational security are going to be introduced in this era, which enables vehicles to start reacting to their environment. And we have lots of examples from companies which we have been discussing, like Sony or onsemi, Smart Eye, and Seeing Machines, and Electrobit, where they are setting the groundwork for delivering efficiency modes or WDR sensors, which are used for energy usage optimization, low light performance, or deploying driver monitoring conditions, gaze tracking, and also providing the groundwork for secure low latency sensor pipelines and OTA foundations. The next era, which is between 28 to 32, we have identified as the perceptive intelligence era, where we are talking about sensors which can gain real-time environmental understanding, technologies like multispectral fusion, real-world scene labeling, and embedded AI will actually make the perception contextual and actionable. So systems also scale using packaging and modular integration, and security steps up with the quantum safe encryption technique and also the multimodal privacy protection. We have seen a lot of companies like Prophecy and Sony, which are maturing into neuromorphic sensing, which is enabling dynamic obstacle interpretation, Nanco, which is pushing SWR for fog and dark scene vision, and Arman, which is embedding next-gen security directly into their sensor data streams. And while we have examples of Bosch and Aptiv, they're enabling platform scaling through modular vehicle-wide perception nodes. So companies have already started acting based on the era that we have defined. And the next stage which we have is the cognitive sensing era between 2033 and 35. And this is about full autonomy, where sensors are no longer just inputs, but they can become AI native systems which are capable of real-time learning, semantic fusion, and emotional awareness. So these systems can actually self-adapt to driver state, context, and environment, and they can ensure that they meet the safety and regulatory demands across global markets. OTA perception updates can actually eliminate the need for physical recalls. So we have examples like from NVIDIA, Mobileye. They've already creating edge native AI stacks, which can evolve into post deployment. And Toby is enabling emotion aware sensing. And while Spectrosity is aiming to deliver physiological insight via spectral imaging. Tier ones like ZF and Magna, they're working on OTA upgradable compliance ready sensor architecture, which can support the future of L5 autonomy. What matters is these sensor choices and system designs that we make today will actually make an impact on how scalable and upgradable the platforms are going to be in 2032 and beyond. And if you're going to miss this, you're going to face this costly reintegration, regulatory setbacks, and product delays, while the others will pull ahead with the future ready stacks. So we have to start thinking from here. Having discussed about all these things, it will be interesting to see what the ecosystem players are doing. And I'll pass it on to Jillian to take that part on that session. Thank you.
Thank you, Kasthuri. Yes, so we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the value chain dynamics. But before we do that, if we can go to the next slide, we want to just extend as a thank you for joining us today. Our offer for free access to one of two reports from our Advanced Sci-Tech Research Program. So you can choose either next generation innovations that are driving advances in connected and autonomous vehicles, or you can choose Edge AI for the industrial metaverse. So all you need to do is just select your preference in the post webinar survey, and we'll send you a copy of one of those two reports. Okay, so let's dive deeper into one of the biggest transformations that we're seeing, and that is the structure of the value chain itself. So traditionally, the process of developing image sensors for vehicles followed a fairly straightforward step-by-step approach. So material suppliers handed off to foundries who passed onto process wafers onto sensor packaging and test firms. And then there came the camera module assemblers, the tier ones, and finally OEMs who integrated the tech into the vehicle. So each player had a very defined role and very little changed between the steps. But that model, I mean, as I think we've been talking about through the whole presentation, that model just simply doesn't work anymore. And why is that? Well, because image sensing has really moved from being a standalone component to a core part of a connected software-defined system. So today, how that system is designed, how it's tested, how it's tuned, it must reflect everything downstream, including, the AI that's going to process the data and how the car is going to respond on the road. So that shift is driving a holistic kind of rethink of collaboration across the value chain. So if you look at the diagram on this slide, you'll notice how traditional handoffs are really being replaced by these cross-tier interactions and feedback loops. So for instance, we have OEMs like BMW, Volkswagen. They're no longer waiting until the integration stage. They're working directly with OSATs, even substrate vendors for that matter, to co-define modules that meet things like, what is the thermal performance metrics that need to be met, cybersecurity, regional compliance requirements. And they're doing this from the start of design. Another example, semiconductor companies are co-investing with the tier ones to localize fabrication or to fine-tune packaging for harsh automotive environments. Sensor developers are sitting in joint workshops with AI companies to align ISP timing, signal fidelity, readout patterns with perception model behavior. So, what we're seeing here is more than just kind of industry alignment. It really is co-engineering this concept of perception across disciplines. And this is happening because, the concept of value creation itself has shifted from the idea of a part to the idea of a platform. It's no longer about, selling a better camera, but about delivering that kind of holistic perception system that has to be modular. It has to be regulation ready, secure, and of course, upgradable. And to accomplish that, it really requires value chain that is efficient, that is agile, that is integrated, and that is very responsive. So, if you think about if you're a stakeholder anywhere along this chain, then you have to be engaging early. You have to be pursuing deeper collaborations. You have to be viewing sensor development not as a kind of task, but as a shared, collective system-wide challenge. Basically, in this new model, competitive advantage really is coming from how well you're collaborating and co-innovating. So let's take that idea just a step further and talk about what this shift means for how companies need to work together. So we're entering a stage where collaboration is becoming, like I said, a competitive necessity. The most advanced automotive perception systems today aren't being built, in silos. They're really the result of that deep collaboration across hardware, software, vehicle integration teams, all of those working together in lockstep. So let's take the example of AI model performance. For perception systems to really work, whether it's detecting a pedestrian or if we're trying to understand even hand gestures, that sensor must provide exactly the right kind of signal with the right precise timing, contrast, clarity, and the solutions for that sort of problem have to start upstream at the sensor design level itself. So that's why we're seeing AI chip makers like Halo and NVIDIA now directly involved in defining ISP architecture. It's why software firms are setting expectations for frame synchronization and for compression formats. And it's why even optical stack developers are being pulled into conversations about edge inference accuracy. And we're also seeing co-innovation between more unexpected partners. So, for example, as Kasthuri's already noted earlier, Sony and Prophecy working together to build event-based sensors that not only that respond to motion, that to help reduce that data traffic and latency. Another example would be Mobileye and Ford, who are co-developing sensor pipelines that blend thermal and HDR imaging to ensure visibility and safety in unfavorable conditions like nighttime conditions or glare conditions. And then we have the tier ones, who are evolving from hardware integrators to full stack perception orchestrators. So they're expected to ensure that all sensing inputs, whether that be thermal, stereo, shortwave, infrared, time of flight inputs, that all of those inputs are fused, that they're calibrated, and that they're interpreted in real time. And then the OEMs. So they're really the ones that are kind of raising the bar overall because today's automotive platforms need to be OTA upgradable, modular, and cyber secure. So that's forcing all partners, so everyone from the chip vendors to the camera suppliers, to really design those systems that evolve post deployment stage. And then regulations themselves are catching up. So frameworks are now including data privacy, software certification, explainable AI, importantly. And this, again, is placing more pressure on teams to co-innovate early and often. So the key takeaway here is that we're seeing that companies are learning how to build across domains, not just within the domains themselves. And those are the companies that are going to be the ones who are most successful in shaping the future of mobility because they know how to bring all of these various layers together. So what does this mean for practical terms? Let's look at what the key players, OEMs, tier ones, sensor vendors, and the tech providers should be doing now and how that changes over time. So on this slide here, we break the future of automotive image sensing into 3 stages. The first stage, 2025 to 2027, the sensor optimization stage. In this phase, really, it's all about building robust, cost-effective, and energy-efficient systems that meet today's ADAS needs and early compliance demands. So the OEMs really should be focusing on aligning sensor hardware with their vehicle software platforms to ensure long-term upgradability, again, through OTA updates. The tier ones should begin integrating multi-role sensors. So like combining stereo and thermal into flexible stacks that can scale across vehicle models. Sensor vendors must improve durability and things like thermal performance while embedding security features like encryption or boot protection. Tech providers should be build orchestration frameworks that unify these layers in real time, enabling predictive calibration and AI-assisted tuning at the edge. In the next stage, the 2028 to 2032 stage, where we shift from sensing to perception, the perceptive intelligence stage, where we have embedded AI, cross-sensor fusion, adaptive optics becoming the norm. For OEMs will scale use of zonal architectures with edge native computing. In-cabin systems will shift from monitoring to intelligent interaction. The tier ones are going to be acting as orchestrators of multimodal inputs in this stage. So managing not just signals, but the logic that makes sense of those signals. The sensor vendors are going to need to develop lightweight, reconfigurable platforms that can plug into multiple domains, ADAS in cabin, V2X, for example. And the software teams are going to need to manage trust, privacy, performance under increased scrutiny, especially from regulations. In the final stage, 2033 to 2035, what we're calling the cognitive sensing systems stage. So by this point in time, sensors are not just going to kind of see the world, they're going to really be interpreting it. So systems are going to be able to detect intent, emotion, health states, environmental nuance. So in this stage, the OEMs are going to be the ones who will lead really in defining the standards for adaptive, emotion-aware perception systems. The tier ones will be delivering certified continuously learning perception stacks. The sensor vendors must build modules that can self-calibrate, that can learn over time and integrate seamlessly into cross-domain ecosystems. And for the tech providers will own the orchestration of perception itself. So managing AI models, OTA learning, regulatory transparency across every edge node, if you will. So net. Success again in this space is going to come from delivering flexible, intelligent, secure sensing systems that are designed, again, at the outstart from day one to evolve with the vehicle, the driver, and the road. Okay, so with that, today, I think we have a few questions that we'd like to get to. I know that we had a few questions submitted before the event, so I'm going to kind of pull on one of those. And we were asked, what areas of ADAS should suppliers be investing their majority of efforts? I'm going to ask Kasthuri if she wants to handle that one.
Kasthuri, you want to answer that?
Kasthuri? The areas of ADAS, should suppliers be investing the majority of their efforts?
Yeah, just give me a minute, Jillian, just 1 minute.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So the first part of it, what we see is as ADAS is evolving from optional convenience to regulatory mandated safety infrastructure, what we need to see is suppliers have to prioritize scalable, intelligent, and upgradable systems. And the first part or the focus areas or high impact areas are going to be, the first one is multi-sensor sensor fusion and the redundancy. And why? Because no single sensor is reliable in all conditions. And by combining camera, radar, LiDAR, and thermal, it ensures robust perception in poor lighting, fog, and glare. So what we need to do is the suppliers have to invest in data fusion engines that process input from multiple modalities and provides output which are deterministic. And these are very crucial for ISO certifications, which is the 26262 certification. And it also enables failed operational safety, which is very critical for L2 plus and L3 systems, especially in Europe and China markets. The second focus area is going to be the perception and prediction intelligence, which we have also mentioned. Well, why? Because object deduction is not enough. Systems must interpret context and anticipate behavior, and which is what we have been talking in the roadmaps also. So this calls for developing AI models which can support semantic segmentation, trajectory prediction, and scene level reasoning. And this can also integrate low latency edge inference pipelines, which is important for real time operation on vehicle compute platforms. And we have examples from Qualcomm, where they are talking about the Snapdragon Ride, NVIDIA Drive Orin, and so on. So these are examples related to the inference pipelines. And the third focus area is the in-cabin monitoring and human mission understanding. Why it is important? Because regulatory tailwinds, which is from Europe GSR or Euro NCAP, this is actually driving demand for driver monitoring systems and occupant safety. The focus should be on gaze tracking, alertness estimation, child or pet deduction, which is what will be required soon across all vehicles in Europe and parts of Asia. Going beyond safety, which is to support personalization, gesture interfaces, and wellness sensing for premium segments will be also important. The next important or the high impact area is the software defined modularity and the OTA integration, where OEMs can transition to software defined vehicle architectures, and supplier must deliver systems that are OTA ready, modular, and adaptable. So it is important to invest in upgradable ADAS modules, which can support new features with post sale, and also align with the zonal compute trends and SDV orchestration platforms. For example, we have Brosh cross domain and active smart vehicle architecture, which are supporting these trends. So this is the fourth area. And why now? Because all the roadmaps are being set and specifications are locking. And we also have seen regulatory bodies are actually accelerating safety and feature requirements. OEMs are increasingly preferring suppliers that just not provide hardware, but complete perception and orchestration platforms. So these are some of the critical areas that suppliers can look into.
And I'm gonna give a question here from the participants to Subbu here, and that
Yeah.
is what do you think is the business potential for automated automobiles through image sensing, and what would be the adoption cycle?
Yeah. So, in terms of the business potential, we mentioned the image sensors business potential, that's $7.5 billion. Now, the market for global ADAS and autonomous vehicles itself, it ranges, I mean, the estimates range from $50 billion by 2030 to some estimates even go up to like 250 billion dollars. That being said, if you look at the adoption cycle, for these image sensing for automation, we are now in the era of enhanced ADAS. So that's L2 plus. We call it L2 plus. So this will be till at least 2027. By then, we will see L3 levels coming in. So by 2028, we should see L3 firmly in place. And then beyond that would be L4. So 2032 is when we look at L4 autonomy. And then L5, I would say, is really beyond 2030 to 2035. So that would be the adoption timeline.
Uh, great. And another question here on skills and roles. So viewpoint on skills and roles needed in this new ecosystem.
Yes. Now you see this ADAS ecosystem, right? As we move from a level 2 to level 4 autonomy, we need a significant transformation in the workforce capabilities. So we would need various skills and roles and skills. So we have the perception and sensor layer that Kasthuri was mentioning earlier. So we would need computer vision engineers. So you would need object detection, 3D vision, optical flow kind of skills with other tools. And then you have the sensor fusion specialist. And then you have the machine learning and deep learning engineer. somebody who can, take supervised, unsupervised learning thing, transfer learning, self-supervised learning for perception. And then you have the AI, edge, and compute and embedded systems. So here you have the embedded software engineers, and then of course the autonomous driving stack developers. Then you also have functional safety, security, and validation. So some of the key roles would be, functional safety engineer, cyber security engineer. We earlier spoke about, a cyber security vulnerability. So cyber security engineers would be important. And then integrating this vehicle integration and systems engineering. So ADAS, we talked about ADAS. So ADAS system engineer. And then you also have something called the vehicle dynamics specialist. And then, of course, you would have the program policy and, commercial strategy roles that would be coming in. So these are, the roles that would be developing. And then you would also need some interdisciplinary skills. So digital twin engineers, synthetic data engineers, edge to cloud integration architects. And then also you have ethics and trust AI specialists coming in, because so much of AI is going to come in. So you would need that role also. So this would, I would say, some of the roles that would be important.
Great, thank you. Okay, another question. What is the impact on back-end systems and services in general?
Sure. What we see is as ADAS and autonomous systems are becoming more advanced, these backend systems are also transforming from passive support infrastructure to mission critical enablers of perception, decision making, compliance, and fleet-wide optimization. Where is the pressure intensifying and how these evolve? All these backend systems are evolving. Let's take a look at it. The first point is the shift from data storage to data intelligence, where we see autonomous vehicles generate terabytes of data daily. And then storing that data isn't enough. It must be processed, labeled, and also analyzed, which has to happen in real time. The backend platform systems that needs to support our sensor data ingestion pipelines, edge to cloud synchronization models, and real-time scenario replay and validation. So it has to be driven through OTA updates, safety logs, and regulatory audits. The pressure point here is to actually build scalable, low latency data platforms that can manage mixed sensor inputs while ensuring version control and traceability. The next point is AI model lifecycle management, where perception and decision models must evolve constantly. They must be retrained, redeployed, and tracked through OTA delivery and in-field performance. Backend systems that have to support our model versioning and rollback, edge deployed inference and tracking, regulatory explainability and audit logs, which must integrate with the human in the loop feedback for false positive or negative learning, and also the rare case re-annotation. The pressure point here is ensuring that these model integrity across distributed vehicles without causing safety critical regressions or compliance issues. So safety becomes an important point here. The next is the security, privacy, and compliance infrastructure. As we see, vehicles are now becoming data centers on the wheels. Backend services are responsible for providing data localization, encryption, and real-time compliance enforcement. What we also see is these backend systems must enable secure data sharing between OEMs, tier ones, and regulators, onboard, offboard security handoffs, compliance with the regulations like GDPR, CCPA, China cybersecurity law, and so on. So the pressure point for the suppliers or like the backend systems that we are considering is to support a cross-border deployment while maintaining specific privacy and security controls across the region. The next point is the vehicle to cloud orchestration, where we see software-defined vehicles rely on cloud orchestration for feature updates, fleet learning, and performance optimization. The backend systems are expected to monitor vehicle health and sensor performance, deploy and validate OTA feature updates, and also enable remote diagnostics and recovery. So ensuring seamless, fail-safe OTA capabilities that align with functional safety standards such as the ASIL-B or the D standards are becoming very important. So, and why now? Because software-defined vehicle launches have begin, and we are seeing that from 2025, 26, and so on. OEMs are consolidating cloud partners and demanding vendor-aligned backup ecosystems. Regulations are mandating data explainability, model lineage, and real-time compliance proof, which are becoming not just optional but are very important features. So backend is no longer after the fact; it is going to be the foundation for autonomy, security, and regulatory survival. So these are some of my thoughts on that, Jillian.
Great. I think maybe we have time for just really quickly one last question. And we talked a little bit about hurdles and challenges earlier, but let's put that in relationship to LiDAR. So what are the key hurdles that keep AVs from using a purely vision-based system while having the confidence level of using LiDAR?
Okay. So basically, you're saying why we cannot rely on vision systems, or is that?
Yeah. So what are the key hurdles that keep autonomous vehicles from using a purely vision-based system while having the confidence level of using LiDAR?
Okay. So what we basically see here is vision-based systems have actually made very remarkable strides, like powered by deep learning or improved optics and edge computing platforms. What they cannot fully replace is the reliability, precision, and redundancy which is offered by LiDAR or radar and safety critical AV stacks. And this is because the industry moved toward vision first or vision only, which is more aspirational, but not yet sufficient for L3 plus autonomy in open, unstructured environments. So why vision-only systems are falling short today? It's because of the depth perception limitations, where we see vision system estimate depth through stereo vision or monocular inference. And these are prone to failure in textureless scenes, like white walls, parked cars, or occluded objects. LiDAR provides direct depth measurements, which is dense, pixel accurate distance data through vision, which can be only approximate. The other important part is the lightning and weather sensitivity, where actually cameras struggle with low light, high glare, heavy rain, fog, or snow. And even with HDR or WDR capabilities, or even SWIR, NIR technologies, we see that sometimes the performance can degrade significantly. However, LiDAR or radar can operate independently of ambient lighting, and these are more robust in adverse weather conditions. And then we see the redundancy part, where we have vision systems which rely on line of sight, where LiDAR, especially the 360-degree systems, can detect partially occluded objects, offering safety critical redundancy attribute. So in complex urban environments with parked trucks, cyclists, or cross traffic, this part of redundancy matters. The next important thing is the edge case fragility, where we have vision only stacks which are less reliable in unexpected or rare case scenarios. And these are especially due to blown out exposure or glass reflections, construction detours, or erratic pedestrian behavior. And these edge cases actually account for a very large number of safety failures. So this factor is also very important. The next important one is the certification and the functional safety part of it, where vision system, especially the deep learning based ones, which are more probabilistic and are harder to interrupt. So regulations require more deterministic behavior, explainability, and redundancy, which vision-only architectures we find like they currently struggle to provide under the ISO 262 and UNECER 157 standards. So this also becomes very important here. So these are some of my perspectives, Jillian.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Kasthuri. And I think that's all that we have time for today. So thank you for joining us.